All right, class, welcome to that big HVAC school where we're about to crank up the heat on your learning. Forget about sharpening those pencils. We're diving straight into the cool world of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Now, we are going to breeze through the big concepts. And hey, don't sweat it here. There are no pop quizzes here. So let's fire up those brain cells and get this HVAC's party started. Here is your big HVAC host, Dwayne Anderson.
Thanks, Erica. And welcome, class, to that big HVAC school. If you missed the introduction last week, that big HVAC school is a supplemental podcast of that big HVAC show. The purpose is to educate those new to HVAC. This was emphasized in the homework assignment mentioned in last week's episode. Did you complete the assignment? If you missed it, the homework assigned was to listen to another podcast. Who does that, right? The podcast is called Strategize, spelled S-T-R-A-T-A, Strata. Clever. Jize, G-I-Z-E. The June 20th episode featured Catherine Olson. Why was this the assigned homework? Well, this specific episode discussed the challenges new strata managers face when beginning their new role. In conversations I've had with property and strata managers, including Catherine Olson, over the last few years, these newcomers to facilities management also need an education in understanding HVAC acronyms, terminology, and equipment. And that is the purpose of that big HVAC school. This will be our curriculum. So let's begin with lesson 1. Welcome, class. Lesson 1 today is very basic. The topic, HVAC. Years ago, I knew a young man who was a helper to a building operations team. He enjoyed what he was learning and was fascinated by the building's mechanical systems, including pneumatic controls. Yeah, that shows how old this story is. Before he enrolled in school to become a power engineer, he was asked if he knew what the acronym HVAC stood for. And his response showed his love of pneumatics when he stated, high velocity air control. While this young man was quickly thought on his feet, his answer was completely wrong. Acronyms in any industry become a part of our language, but does everyone understand them? So in today's lesson, what does the acronym HVAC mean? Simply, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. 4 letters, 3 key components of an entire industry. Let's break these 3 key components down. Heating. What is the first thing you think of when you hear the word heat? Fire? Perhaps you've even sat around a campfire this long weekend. And as the evening goes on, you move a little closer to the fire to keep warm. Or perhaps when you think of heat, you think of comfort. If you've been sick or experienced a chill, you add blankets to keep you warmer. Again, to keep you comfortable. The second key component is ventilation. What comes to mind when you think of ventilation? I always think of the scene in Die Hard when Bruce Willis is crawling through the ductwork.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
What about you? Perhaps that famous Marilyn Monroe scene when her dress blows upwards because of a gust of air?
Oh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
Or maybe sitting in front of a fan, speaking into it, pretending to sound like Darth Vader.
La la Luke, Luke, I am your father. La la lo.
Regardless, ventilation brings to mind a combination of sheet metal and air movement. Lastly, what comes to mind when you think about air conditioning? Perhaps something cool like snowflakes or Slurpees on a warm summer's day. And speaking of warm summer's days like we had this weekend, perhaps you went into a facility that was air conditioned to be refreshed, to be comfortable. That's what HVAC is supposed to do, to keep us comfortable. It's these three key components that are in most HVAC equipment. Now, what's a simple example of this just to illustrate? Well, let's consider a furnace. Most people have or grew up in a home with a furnace. And really, what is a furnace in its simplest form? It's a heat source, and that's your H in HVAC. This heat source is surrounded by a metal box with a fan to push the heat. There is your V for ventilation. And some furnaces have air conditioning as well. And this requires a cooling source, and that is the AC for air conditioning. And all this is in a metal box to push the cool air. So in summary, HVAC equipment has at least two of these three key components. First, they all have a metal box with a fan to push the air. Next, you either have a heat source or a cooling source or both. And we will demonstrate in future classes as we discuss other major HVAC equipment. So that wraps up our first lesson on HVAC, the meaning of the acronym and the three key components. No homework today. Who assigns homework on day one? I mean, really? Class dismissed.
Hey there, so you want to know more about this topic, right? Cool, just shoot an email to that bighvacshow@gmail.com and we'll hook you up with all the deets. Oh, and don't forget to follow us on the socials. You can find us at that Big HVAC Show on the Gram, the Bird app now known as X, and YouTube too. Oh, and speaking of YouTube, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe if you're watching there.